Morning, everybody.
Morning.
Okay.
Guess we've got 2 more minutes. I'll mute us here.
It's 9 o'clock in my watch.
No problem. Okay, fine.
Walter?
Guilty. President Davis, we are live.
We're unmuted. There you go, sir.
Which clock are we using for being going live here and calling the meeting to order?
Well, the computer says 9:06. The clock on the wall says 9 o'clock. So I think we can go ahead and
Just call her 9 o'clock.
let's call it 9 o'clock. So
Call the meeting to order this morning at 9 a.m. Charlie, could you please proceed with your little talk here?
yes, thank you, President Davis. The Wyoming Pari-Mutuel Commission special meeting, February 11th, 2022. Welcome to the February 11th special meeting of the Wyoming Pari-Mutuel Commission. The primary mission of the Commission is the protection of the wagering public and the health, safety, and welfare of the participants in all lawful gaming and pari-mutuel activity. Individuals who wish to address the Commission will be recognized and called on by the President to speak. After the President has recognized you, please clearly state your name and the name of the organization you represent prior to addressing the Commission. All comments, questions, responses must flow through the President by addressing the President each time you wish to speak. This procedure ensures an orderly flow of discussion during the Commission meeting. All meetings of the governing body of the agency are public meetings open to the public, except as otherwise provided pursuant to 16.4.403A. This meeting is being held via Zoom today with a live YouTube feed as well. Inclusion on the agenda does not necessarily constitute a Commission action. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. At this time, could we go ahead and proceed with the roll call vote?
Roll call. President Davis.
Here.
Thank you. Vice President Broussard. Vice President Broussard, are you on the call? Vice President Broussard is absent this morning. Commissioner Cavallo.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Daigle.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Berry.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Leinen.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Kura.
Here.
Thank you, sir. Governor's Advisory Representatives. Dwayne Pacheco.
Here and good morning.
Good morning, Dwayne.
Good morning. Jenny Wildcat, are you able to join us this morning? Jenny is absent. Dan Schiffer, are you on the call? Yes, I see him.
Yes, I am. Good morning.
Good morning, Dan.
And our legislative representatives, Representative Newsom.
Here.
Thank you very much. Senator Driscoll. Senator Driscoll, were you able to attend the meeting today? Senator Driscoll is absent. Pledge of allegiance.
With that, Charlie, I think we can proceed with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen. Yeah. Want to address that before we start with the agenda? Or?
Yes.
Okay. At this time, I believe recognition is due to one of the outstanding members of the commission that is about to retire, Commissioner Lyman.
We'd just like to say thank you, Randy, for all your service. I know the state of Wyoming appreciates you and applauds you for all your hard work. You're going to be missed.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Randy.
Have you found the person that will replace you yet, Randy?
I don't know. I recommended somebody to Charlie. I don't know where it's at.
Okay, well, you can't get off the commission unless you have a replacement. That's in the fine print.
I
Thank
missed
you.
that.
You did, huh? Thank you for your outstanding service and leadership.
Also,
Appreciate it.
President
Thank you.
Davis, for the record, if I could identify Mike Kaler from the Attorney General's office is joining us today. And at this point, I don't see any other attendees from either the executive branch or the legislative branch on the call at this point.
Okay, at this time then, Charlie, we can go to item 2, the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
President Davis, I would move we
So
approve
moved.
the agenda.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Did you see who moved?
Yes.
Okay,
Dr. Berry, Commissioner Berry moved.
and Commissioner Lyman, second.
Yes.
Any discussion on the agenda? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed,
Aye.
same sign. Motion carried. Item number 3, Charlie, has everybody had a chance to look at the previous minutes?
Yes.
And I would be looking for a
Yes.
motion to approve the special meeting of February 3rd, 2022.
So moved.
Who moved?
Second.
Cavello.
Cavello and Sherry?
Mhm.
Okay. Any discussion on that? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Okay, Charlie, item 3 is done. Item number 4, 307 Horse Racing LLC. A request received December 21st. I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, thank you, President Davis. Item number 4, 307 Horse Racing LLCA, a request received December 21st, 2021, seeking approval of 2 new math models, Exacta 1055 and Exacta 3020, and their 8 associated game themes. Listed on the page, you have the additional game themes, and I'll turn it over to Special Agent Laramendi to go through the remainder of your packet.
Nick, oh, there's Nick.
President Davis.
Go ahead, Nick.
So if item number 4, 307 Horse Racing has requested 2 new math models Exacta 1055 and math model 3020. In your packet, you'll see the investigative report that details the breakdown of each math model and the associated game themes for those. It's a pretty lengthy report. It's about 8 pages long. So I'll get to the takeout rates. The takeout rates for the 1055 math models run from 5 to 10%. And for the 3020 math models, they run from 6 to 10%. Go up just a little bit in the report here. So these 2 math models are comparative to all the other math models and game themes that the commission has approved. I did not notice anything that would prevent them from being approved, and I would stand for any questions if there are any.
Commissioners, we would need a motion to approve the request received December 21st.
President Davis, this is Commissioner Lyman. I would move that we accept or approve the request by 307 Horse Racing to approve these games and math models.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Discussion, commissioners. Any discussions or questions for Nick? Hearing a motion on the floor. All those in favor, aye.
Public
Aye.
discussion.
Aye.
Aye.
I forgot the public in there. Is there anybody in the public out there with a hand up?
President Davis, I don't see any hands.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Okay, everybody go back to aye.
Mr. President,
Yes?
this is Dwayne. I guess I can speak for the public. Is that right? Is that my spot?
Well, you can speak anytime you want. Right?
All right. Thank you, Mr. President. I recall earlier when I first came on the commission, there was some discussion regarding what the visual of or the intent of the games looked like. And I was wondering if this met that I guess what the wishes of the commission were initially, and maybe Charlie can speak to this. They didn't want them to look like slot machines, if you will. I remember a discussion about that. Charlie, can you speak to that? Or does that make sense?
Yes, President Davis, Governor's advisory individual, Pacheco, thank you for that. Initially what we had looked at, we had concerns that maybe there would be lewd or crude or different issues with the appearance of the game themes. And, while I think Mr. Laramendi has reviewed I know he has reviewed the screenshots, the visual aspect of that. Yes. And Nick, can you follow up on that, please?
Certainly. President Davis, Mr. Pacheco. So all of the themes that come into our office, we review the gameplay of the video and screenshots as well, just to ensure that they don't have any ultra provocative type themes or any themes that would go along the lines of poker, Keno, those types of things is what we're looking for. And the themes that have been submitted don't fall into those categories.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Laramendi.
Thank you, Dwayne. Very good question. We do need to keep on top of that and make sure that we are monitoring that as we're going with all these different changes with the multiple games. Okay, now we can go back to any further discussion. Hearing no further discussion, now we can go to all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Hearing none, Charlie. 4A has passed. Let's look at 4B, the request received January 10th for a new OTB location in Casper, Wyoming, sponsored by 307 Horse Racing.
Yes, thank you, President Davis. Item number 4B, as you had said, this is a request that was received January 10th, 2020, seeking approval for a new OTB location in Casper, Wyoming. 307 Racing at the Pump Room at 739 North Center Street, Casper, Wyoming. At this point, I'll turn it over to Special Agent Laramendi to provide the background information and the recommendation.
Thank you, President Davis, commissioners. On January 10th, 2022, the commission received the request for a new location from 307 Horse Racing. With that submission, we received the operational plans, updated simulcast permits, updated financial and revenue projections, the rendered drawings, Natrona County Resolution 38-21, which grants county commission approval, the lease agreement, and the host facility application. All of the documentation was reviewed. The site plan lists a total of 86 proposed historic horse racing terminals. It is a commingled location. It will have a off-track wagering facility as well as a restaurant and bar. The 307 Horse Racing provided all of the required documentation and this request is consistent with other submissions. Additionally, 307 Horse Racing holds a permit to offer pari-mutuel wagering in the state of Wyoming and remains in good standing. In your packet, you'll see the feasibility studies, the county resolution, as well as the floor plan and the updated permit applications. This request is in line with all other requests that we've received for new locations, and I would stand for any questions on this one as well.
All right. At this time, commissioners, I would be looking for a motion for item 4.
President Davis,
Go ahead, Randy.
Nick, looking at the layout and the floor plan here, is there a, you feel it's sufficient to go ahead and say that we're not going to have, since there is a restaurant associated with this, that we're not going to go ahead and have underage individuals with unlimited access to these games?
President Davis, Commissioner Lannon, I believe with the way that the layout is made, you know, the underage people could access the restaurant facility, but it would be very limited to the historic horse racing and the simulcasting areas.
Okay, thank you. I mean, it appears as though the only restrooms in the facility are on the opposite end of the building from the bar and food service. So I was just curious as to whether that, you know, they'll be walking past there if they need to go to the restroom. So, and if that would be limited.
President Davis, I also have Mr. Ridgway with 307 Horse Racing. He's raised his hand. If he could probably speak a little bit to that plan as well.
Okay, Nick, if you'll follow him through. Good morning.
Good morning. It kind of just faded me out and now I'm in. So the Commissioner Linen, Kyle Ridgway, CFO of 307 Horse Racing. I appreciate your question. And part of the reason that we like this facility is because the restaurant side is really segregated from the gaming side itself. So there's a separate entrance to the restaurant entirely, which is on the southwest side of the building. And then there's a separate entrance on the south side of the building to the gaming. And so it's our concept that the staff is basically policing how those two entrances work, and they're going to be coached up on that. There's only two ways you can come into the gaming side from the restaurant side. One is through the main restaurant entrance. You then got to go through a completely separate set of doors from the waiting area to get into the gaming area. Otherwise, you have to walk through where the staff would be walking for the kitchen, because the kitchen is on the east side of the restaurant, and the staff will run from those doors through the gaming area across. But for, you know, underage folks to try to get through, that's going to be heavily policed because there's only two ways through, one way or the other, and we're going to have staff at both locations basically at all times. The other is there is a set of restrooms in that southwestern side. When you first come into the restaurant side, there are two restrooms there that you do not have to go through the gaming area to access. So we've put some thought into that, and we're going to do everything we can to police that. And if we do run into problems, then, you know, we'll work with Special Agent Laramendi and everybody else to make sure that we heavily police that.
Did you, Commissioner Lyman? You're muted.
That satisfies my question. I wondered what those two rooms were over there and off the bar and food service, and they weren't labeled. They were the only ones that were labeled were across the facility. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Ridgway.
Thank you.
Any other questions right now for Nick or Mr. Ridgway at this time? We got a little in front of ourselves here, so I would be looking for a motion for for item 4B, the request for the new OTB.
Mr. President, I would move that we approve the new OTB location for 307.
Thank you, Cactus. Is there a second?
President Davis, I would second that.
Thank you, Randy. Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Is there anything in the public out there, Nick?
President Davis, I don't see any other hands.
No other hands. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you. All right, now we'll go on to item number 5, the rules, the meat and potatoes of the meeting here. With that, Charlie, I'll let you start it out with the skill-based amusement gaming rules.
Thank you, President Davis. Item number 5, rules and stakeholder and public input for the skill-based amusement games. The draft rules that we're working on today are posted on the website. It is version 6.2-02-04-22. It is on the website. We're going to be working on that set today. The primary focus of today's meeting is to walk through chapter by chapter and hear public comments. We did receive in the last few days, and commissioners, you have been provided public comments, and we will have those comments posted on the website as soon as possible, and I can go through those real quickly if you'd like me to. Earlier in the week, we received a comment from Sunrise Distributing regarding their concerns. It was via an email on 2/8. I received a letter earlier in the week on February 6th from Amusement Music Operators of Wyoming. And in their request, they were hoping that the commission would consider limiting the offering of skill-based amusement games to liquor establishments and truck stops. I received yesterday afternoon a communication from Sagebrush Amusements regarding that limitation to truck stops and liquor establishments, and they were not in favor of that. And again, these the comments so far that we've received have been emailed to you this morning. And then this morning I received from Patriot Contests a 3-page review of the rules. They had a concern with the definition in Chapter 1. They had a concern in Chapter 2, Chapter 3, Chapter 8, and also Chapter 6, not in that order. But again, as I had said, it's the commission's intent, and it's our intent to, if the individuals are interested in speaking to those letters that were submitted today, they would be obviously able to. If they're not, we'll keep these with our packets, and we can walk through chapter by chapter. What I envision, or the commission envisions today, is we would have a motion to open a chapter, go through it, take public comment, receive questions from you all to the individuals that are commenting, and then we would close that chapter with a motion and then move to the next chapter. So with that being said,
I would look for a motion to open up chapter number 1. Is there a motion?
President Davis, I'll make the motion. We open up chapter 1 for discussion.
Thank you, Commissioner Berry. Is there a second?
President Davis,
I'll second that.
Okay, somebody was fast with that. Was that
Cavell.
Commissioner Cavell?
Yes.
Okay, with that, Charlie, shall we start with section 1, line item
Yes.
number 4?
Chapter 1, which is the general provisions, and it's the definitions. And again, Mr. Laramendi, if you would let me know if we have anyone raising their hands. We have quite a few. We have 3 pages of definitions here. Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak to this first? Or commissioners, would you prefer that we just go through each definition and then open it up for the public? What would you like to do?
Any preference, commissioners? Well, Charlie, look.
President Davis.
Go ahead, Randy.
I am comfortable with the definitions, and unless anyone else from the public has any concerns about them, I would feel, I don't have any problems with them, and I think we could, in the interest of getting on to the more meaty things, the definitions here I don't think are a cause for any concern.
Well, historically, Commissioner Lyman, we've gone through these and checked to see if there's anything. There's on key personnel, section 1, we have a comment from DraftKings.
That would be, no, that would be Patriot Contests and Skills.
All right.
Thank you for catching that.
Yep. Okay, so I guess we can go through and just highlight, say, section 1A.
Yes, we did receive a comment on section 1, key personnel. Is anyone from Patriot Games on the call, Nick, wanting to speak to this at this point?
President Davis, Director Moore, there's no hands at this time.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll just take that comment as duly noted.
And for the public and for the commissioners, would you like me to read that comment?
Sure.
Please, Charlie.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Section 1, key personnel, is too broadly defined. K and 4, affiliate, is not defined and could mean even low-level employees. Same with K and 7, which gives the commission discretion to decide that an individual or business is key personnel. The problem here is the key personnel can be audited pursuant to Chapter 3, Section 8B3. Further, upon such broad definition, a low-level employee could be considered to have control of an operator permit and or vendor license pursuant to Chapter 2, Section 2G4, which in turn gives the commission unfettered power over these individuals. We would suggest making these terms more narrow to prevent such potentialities over unintended individuals. Excuse me.
Any discussion, commissioners? Do you want to just have Charlie redline that in there and then see what that looks like?
No.
No?
President Davis, this is
Go ahead.
Commissioner Leinen. From what you said, Charlie, and from what I read from what they had there, they want us to have less regulatory control over the people who are actually in charge of these games. And personally, myself, I would hesitate to give up that power, to be quite honest with you. That's my feeling on it.
Thank you, Randy. Any more comment there? Commissioner Tabella, you said no?
No, I agree.
Agree with what?
I agree with Commissioner Leinen.
Okay. Thank you.
President Davis, Commissioner Kura here.
Go ahead.
I think Randy's hit it right on the head, nailed it right on the head on this. I don't think we should be giving up any of this position for anybody to have access to that stuff. That should be heavily regulated.
Further comments? Commissioner Nagel?
She's fine, yeah.
You're good? All right,
If I could jump real quick here.
go ahead, Charlie.
Yeah, and, you know, as we move through these rules, everyone on the call, please understand, this is just the first step in a long process here. Part of the process is, as we go through this, we will look again and review several times. For lack of a better word, we'll compare a definition, and then we'll look at the statutes to make sure we have that statutory authority to support that conversation in our rules and regulations. So this is a first step, and we appreciate the comments, not only from the public, but from you commissioners as well, and your pleasure. And, you know, it is going to take some time here.
Okay, with that,
I don't think,
any other questions or concerns about definition in chapter number 1? We have, okay.
and commissioners, if you have any questions on the definitions or our liaisons or our legislative branch that's on the call, please feel free to ask a question at any point here. If we have no further questions,
Then we'd be looking for a motion.
motion to close.
Motion to close chapter 1 for further review.
So
President
moved.
Davis, I would make that motion.
Okay? Moved by Commissioner Berry and seconded by Commissioner Lyman to close chapter 1 for further comment.
Chapter 2, permits
We'd be looking for a motion
and permittees. Yes.
to open chapter 2.
I move to open chapter 2 for discussion.
Thank you, Sherry. Is there a second?
I'll
Second.
second.
Thank you, Dick. Okay, Charlie. Chapter 2.
President Davis, excuse me, we have a hand in the public. Mr. Agopian with Bank Shop.
Okay. We want to let
And I need to print something, so go ahead. I'm going to print something and be right back.
Let's let Mr. Adopian in, if we can find him out there. Nick,
Can you guys hear me okay, or do I sound like a robot? Because I've been having problems with my headphones.
you sound like a robot.
Okay.
Now we don't hear you at all.
Now,
Well, we'll have to go with the robot.
oh, well, here, I'll put my hand down, and then when you get to the page I want to comment on, 2-7, as Director Moore goes through, I'll raise it again, and I'll get my headphones situated.
On
That's
page
okay with you, Mr.
2-7?
Chairman.
Okay, that sounds good, Nick. We'll just keep you up there in the waiting room then. Okay, commissioners, do we have any comments on section 2, permits, fees, and applications? Pretty standard to the industry right now. Any discussion on chapter 2? Guys are awful quiet out there. Okay, with that, I guess we can go to chapter 2, page 7. And Miss Nick, you have a
Yeah, I had a question, and it really is that 2-7. So at the top of the page, 3 little I, the the statement is a signed affidavit from the manufacturer of the skill-based amusement game, attesting to the fact that the games to be placed is identical in all technical respects to a previously approved game. The term manufacturer is a new one. And so I just wanted to ask the question, or maybe put a pin in it for discussion later. I don't recall in the statute where the manufacturer of the game is regulated. The regulated entities really fall within the two categories of vendor and operator. And so I was, I guess, first curious about the genesis of bringing the manufacturer in at this point.
Very good point, Nick. Do we have Charlie, do we have anything on that, or just a question for?
I think it's a very good question, and thank you, Mr. Gopian. We'll mark that, and he's absolutely correct. It's not defined, nor in statute, nor in our rules. So, thank you for catching that, and we are marking that.
Thank you, Director Moore and Chairman Davis. I guess real quick, if you indulge me, I just wanted to again say thank you for engaging all of us as stakeholders in this process. And certainly, from our perspective today, the highest priority is the end of the rulemaking. As we've discussed on numerous occasions, the rules are is what's needed to move forward with expanding and growing the industry in its current state. And so that's clearly our first priority, is to help effectuate the enactment of these rules.
Thank you, Nick. Is there any further comment on Chapter 2, permits, fees, and applications? Commissioners, further discussion? Nick, is there anybody out there in the audience?
President Davis, I have one more hand that just came up. Mr. Downing with Cowboy Skill.
Okay, if you would like to put Mr. Downing in.
Thank you, Mr. President. Jonathan Downing on behalf of Pace-O-Matic and Cowboy Skill. I just wanted to echo the sentiments of Mr. Agopian as well with respect to the language on manufacturer. In addition, our team has been working on providing some additional substantive comments. Not all of those are ready yet, but as we understand it, we will get those over to the commission as soon as we're able to. So just appreciate your hard work again, and continue to try and be helpful in the process.
Thank you, Jonathan. Are there any questions for Jonathan from the commissioners? Okay, hearing none. Without any further discussion, I would be looking for a closure for Chapter 2. Permits, fees, and application. Is there a motion?
President Davis, I would move that we close Chapter 2, also acknowledging the fact that there were suggestions about Chapter 2 and in the stuff that was sent to us, trying to narrow our purvey, and I would think that acknowledge that we looked at them, but don't agree with them. So I would move that we move on.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Sherry. Okay, Chapter 2 is now closed for comment. Okay, we're going to Chapter 3. Taxes and payments. Would be looking for a motion to open Chapter 3.
President Davis, I move we open Chapter 3.
Thank you, Commissioner Berry. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Dick. Okay, Charlie, we're ready for taxes, payments in general.
Yes, thank you. Trying to keep up with all my notes here. We did receive in Chapter 3. I believe this came from our legislative representative. I believe that's where it came from. In Chapter 3, Section 3, page 3.3, line 3. We're talking about outside the vendor's control. And did we need to further define that? And did we need to define that? I believe we also received,
That's your number 3C.
yeah, we also received a comment on section 1. And my apologies, we're looking at a lot of sheets here. This was from Patriot Games and Contests, Chapter 3, Section 1. On Section 1C, tax return, is this the proper term to be using? We have also received a comment on, again, Chapter 3. And this would be Section 3. On page 3.2, line 23 and 28, non-sufficient funds. And in this comment, they were saying there are many reasons for a delay in remitting taxes, and have we limited ourselves by placing in rule the only situation is non-sufficient funds. So we will make note of that and review those. Looking at some of our the ones that came in just recently. If there's any other comments here, is there anyone, any questions for me while we're in this chapter?
President Davis.
Go ahead.
Commissioner Berry, I had a question. I'm not able to find reference to a tax return. Could you?
That would be on page 3.1. Line number 26 and 27.
Okay, I got you. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more questions about Chapter 3, taxes and payments, that we haven't addressed?
Mr. Chairman, Nicholas Agopian with Bank Shop.
Go ahead, Nick.
It may dovetail on that last identification of that tax return language on 3-1. I was looking at the top of page 3-2, line 1. All payments should be accompanied by sufficient verifying documentation. The commission may recall that last week we made a comment about encouraging the commission to look at utilizing electronic forms or just forms in general to standardize that information that's submitted. And so I don't know, maybe the term tax return as used in Chapter 3, Section 1C would be that form in the format provided by the commission. Excuse me. So I don't know if there's, I guess that would be, this is a good time to restate the interest in seeing forms to ensure that we're providing all the info that the commission needs. And maybe that's envisioned here under section 1C, but I'm not sure.
Commissioners, your opinion? So if I'm getting that right, go ahead.
President Davis, this is Commissioner Leinen.
Go ahead.
From what I'm seeing, the issues with Chapter 3, from what I'm getting from the comments and from what the comments were that Charlie read, they want possibly a narrowing, and these are the stakeholders, the operators and the other, a narrowing of how we go ahead and look at this. And I certainly, if I'm hearing this correctly, I don't have a problem with that in narrowing the parameters that we're looking at here. Mr. Gopian, is that what you're more or less asking for?
I don't know if it's narrowing of the parameter, narrowing of anything. It's just some clear specificity on what. A lot of this seems like it's intertwined. As a vendor, we're going to be required to come up with our internal controls and our processes and have that approved by the commission. Some of that may be a lot more manageable for us, as well as the receipt of information if forms are provided. So we can give you the exact information you're looking at in the place that you need it, and then even better if we can upload it into the system for you, so it doesn't take up staff time at the end of the day.
President Davis, comment back to Mr. Gopian. That makes perfect sense, and I don't have a problem with that.
Charlie, could you give us an update where we are on that then?
Yeah, we currently do have a standard format for the submission of the taxations, and we are in the process of revising that as well. One of the situations that in embracing the electronic transmission, I wasn't a part of it because I had to be in Cheyenne yesterday, but staff was working with ETS yesterday on developing a process for doing that submission. And in the tax submissions that we're envisioning is a electronic submission, but then also a way that where if we have a smaller entity, that they could input that manually as well into a web interfaced portal. We would much prefer, just like I think the majority of the operators, to get this information as close to the servers and to the games as we possibly can to eliminate mistakes and errors, because people are only human, and when you're copying and pasting, instead of a dot, you accidentally place a comma or whatever, that can throw off all of our calculations. So the short version is we are desperately working on that project to get that handled, because that's going to alleviate a lot of the pressure and stress that we have from gathering all that information. And again, I think that the comments we've received here today, the tax returns, some of the different things, I think these are very good comments and very helpful.
More questions from the commissioners this time?
Commissioner David, or President Davis, this is Representative Newsom.
Go ahead.
Thank you. It was my comment on page 3.2 on lines 23 and line 28. And I would suggest we just delete due to non-sufficient funds, because that non-sufficient funds limits the reasons people would maybe not pay their tax.
Mm-hmm.
So I would suggest in both of those places that we simply delete that language, putting the comma after WS 1125-304.
Okay, duly noted. Thank you, Representative Newsom.
Makes good sense.
Makes good sense. Is that what you said, Commissioner Coelho? Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Is there any more from the commission here? Nick, is there anybody out there in the audience?
President Davis, I don't see any other hands.
Okay. With that then, Charlie, we've got all that duly noted here.
Yes, sir.
I would be looking for closure for chapter 3. Is there a motion to close chapter 3?
President Davis, I would move that we close chapter 3.
Thank you.
And I would
Andy.
second that.
Thank you, Commissioner Daigle. Okay, with that, look for a motion to open chapter 4.
Prior to doing that, if I could just, Mr. Laramendi, if there's anyone that is in the waiting room that would like to come into this, as we have Mr. Agopian and as we have Mr. Downing, they're more than welcome to be moved in. Raise your hand and move those in. Whether it's any of our current operators, potential operators, or anyone that does have some comments, we could sure move them all over there.
That would make it easier to see the hand.
President Davis, it's Commissioner Leinen.
Go ahead, Randy.
Point of order here. Do we need a vote by the entire commission? It's been moved and seconded. Do we need a vote by all the commissioners to close the sections?
Yep, we've been skipping that. Good thing you're the past president.
Mr. President.
Yes.
In the interest of time, given that we aren't taking any action on each of these rules just yet, not formally either approving or disproving any of the rules, I think we can just go ahead and move to one section to the other without having a motion and just kind of simplify it.
That be all right with you, commissioners?
Fine with me. Fine with me.
Sounds great to me. All right. Okay, we're still trying to go into chapter 4. Let's do it. Skill-based amusement games in establishments. We'd be looking for comments here. Let's see, we got one here, chapter 4, section 2. Number B. Says all of B is unnecessary and appears to apply only to specific vendors. Line 42, line 40 and 41 is what the comment.
Actually, it looks like it'd be line 8 through 18. They're saying is unnecessary, appears to apply only to specific vendors as I'm reading it.
Okay, all of B is unnecessary and appears only to specific vendors. So where you at, line 8?
President Davis, I believe it's line 17.
Yeah, there you go.
Down to 33.
Let me get the right spot.
4-3 line 17.
Thank you for the correction here.
4-2. Section 2, all of B. Is that what that one? Chapter 4, section 2. This comment.
Section 2. Okay.
Chapter 4.
B. Okay.
All of B.
And then it would include
which is just 40 and 41, isn't
Include 17 through 32, wouldn't it? Yep.
17 through. We got the same thing.
4-3 on 4-3.
No, it's 4-2.
4-2.
Says section 2, which section 2 begins right here, right?
Maybe I need to put my other glasses on.
2 and then 3. Oh, I got my beads mixed up. All right. So this is over here. Okay.
Where we would be referencing, commissioners and everyone joining us, we're on page 4-3, B, lines 17 through 32. And the comment that we received is all of B is unnecessary and appears to apply only to specific vendors. And this comment came from Patriot Contests, and I don't believe anyone is on the call to expand on that, but we do appreciate that. We also have received on Chapter 4, Section 6, page 4-5, line 9 through 13. The comment was maybe wanting to expand on the signage and or define minimum signage. And again, that's on page 4-5. There at the
designated areas.
Yes, in the designated areas section. When I had gone back and reviewed this comment, I feel like when you read designated areas pursuant to 1125-303D, an operator shall not locate a skill-based amusement game in an area of an establishment into which a person under the age of 21 years may enter. An operator shall conspicuously mark each area as age restricted. I believe this comment came from Commissioner Daigle, if I'm not mistaken, and maybe you can explain your concern.
President Davis, Commissioner Daigle. Thank you, Charlie. I missed that in reading it the first time, and I just wanted to make sure that the areas were signed, much like dispensing area from a liquor license. So that takes care of it, and you can remove that comment.
Thank you, Commissioner Daigle. Is there further discussion?
We additionally received on Chapter 4 again, Section 10, page 4-7, lines 17 through 19. They were recommending amending this after employees. The suggestion was to insert of the vendor and operator, of the vendor, comma, an operator, comma, or an operator's employee or agent.
So how would that read then, Charlie?
Non-administrative employees of the vendor, comma, an operator, comma, or an operator's employee or agent may only have access to opening the skill-based amusement game, performing basic maintenance tasks such as refilling. And part of it, in this comment, I believe, came from Sunrise Distributing. And I'm not sure if they're on the call today. They may be. The concern was, and I'll read this. The operators are currently given the keys to the vendors, giving keys to the vendors without issue. There cannot be any fraud Giving keys to vendors provides better customer service to refill paper and fix a jam as needed. This also allows to the cash of payouts as the customers cash a winning ticket. Tracking every dollar put in, played, and paid out provides total transparency. Also, our online reporting system tracks every time a cabinet door opens or closes. Vendors enjoy having access to items in their own business.
What do we think, commissioners?
President Davis, we have a couple of hands up here. I'm not sure if you can see those.
Nope, we can't see them, but bring them in if you would, Nick.
Mr. Agopian had his hand up first, and then Mr. Downing.
Oh, really? Which hand were you using, Nick? Go ahead. Mr. Agopian.
I was using my left hand, Chairman Davis.
Okay.
My comments are Chapter 4, Section 6 about the designated areas. Maybe two separate comments. The first is we would add bank shop to, I think Director Moore had identified you've received comments asking that the locations for games not be limited any further. So bank shop does not support limiting the placement of skill games in only truck stops and bars. Doing so would impact our currently approved locations and impact existing operators that we have vendor agreements with. And so that would be, just to go on the record and offer that. As it comes to Section 6 and some of those locations, we would be subject to meeting the standards in Section 6 for the half wall, I believe is what is identified there. My question on that, or maybe it's more of a comment, is 60 days the right timeline to affect, is 60 days the right timeline? Or would it be more helpful if an operator or the vendor had or I guess it'd be the vendor or the operator had 60 days to have a plan approved by the commission? Because in different locations, the obligations for permitting may change based on the county. And so 60 days may or may not be a reasonable time frame to get the work done, but certainly identifying those locations and getting a plan approved to get the work done would seem to be in that same spirit.
Commissioner?
President Davis, this is Commissioner Leinen.
Go ahead, Randy.
Mr. Gopian, the only place that I've seen these games in the area that I live in are in bars. I haven't seen any in truck stops. I don't frequent truck stops, so there may be some. What locations are you referring to that are not bars or truck stops?
The approved locations that we have would be a C-store. I believe we have locations in a hotel, locations in a vape shop, and then a location in a laundromat. So these would all be locations that would be subject to the new designated area standards. And I would stand corrected if Mr. Laramendi felt that I had missed one.
President Davis, I believe that is correct. Those four.
Okay. So these would be pre-existing is what you're talking about. Trying to bring them into compliance with the new rules and regulations.
Yeah, I mean, we would envision, our intent would be to comply with the rules. It just is this process. We haven't determined if 60 days is enough time to get these, to meet the standards in the designated areas at this. So I'm looking for some feedback internally to see what we would need for those locations. But one option may be just the approval of a plan by the commission to acknowledge that we're moving towards meeting the standards for the designated areas.
And Randy's question is the truck stops and bars. And here we have these machines located in multiple different venues. That's your concern?
No, I mean, my concern is, yes, there are machines in locations. We currently have machines that are not in bars or in truck stops.
Okay.
As approved, the commission has approved those locations today.
President Davis, as we had mentioned early on, we are going to look at all these suggestions and continue to look at what we have put in rules and compare that back to our statutory authority to do that. There is a little concern here that we have identified with limiting to liquor licenses and to the truck stop idea, but we've not completely concluded that review. So again, we're take all of this information is extremely helpful, and I think to speak to the 60 days, it's hard to find employees currently in the state. I know that from the agency's point of view. It's hard to find construction people here in the state. We all understand that. I think whatever we look at on these, and again, when we drafted the rules, a lot of times, I can remember years ago, I put a question mark in a spot, and somebody said, well, you can't put a question mark in there. I says, well, that's what it is. It's a question mark. So, I jumped to the next. I said, okay, well, I'll put X amount. And it's like, oh my gosh, that was too high. So you're, it's definitely, I think the commissioners all understand all of the logistics with adding half walls and doing things. And so we would definitely, absolutely look at that and come up with something that I think would be more palatable for everybody involved.
President Davis, this is Commissioner Leinen.
Go ahead, Randy.
I understand where Mr. Agopian is coming from. My concern with it, and that concern is not going to go away. These games, other outside of locations that are either bars or truck stops. One of the concerns that I get from some of the people who live in my area is that problem gambling and underage gambling. And the problem with that is if we can limit where we're putting these, I think we're covering ourselves better by doing that rather than just kind of freewheeling it. And I understand Mr. Agopian's problem. He already has machines in those particular areas or those particular venues. But if we allow unlimited movement of these games outside of what we've already established, I just think the potential for underage gambling it just grows exponentially. And that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Randy. I think we're looking at 2 different thoughts here though right now, right? We're looking at to come into compliance issue, the approval of the plan or versus 60 days to come into compliance. And then Randy's bringing up an issue of where these machines are currently going to be located according to the rules and regulations. Duly noted. Further comments? Jonathan, did you have your hand up, you said? You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jonathan Downing with Cowboy Skill and Pay-O-Matic. And just for some more background, part of where our prior positions had been on those locations had mainly been along the lines of age appropriate or 21 and over types of locations. And so when you're looking at vape or tobacco stores, those products are over 21 for purchase. And with respect to some of the other comments we've heard from industry today, maybe this is one of those where Director Moore had said, as far as put a question mark on, put it on the industry to try and come up with some additional ideas as far as how we might be able to bridge that gap there. Because there's clearly some areas that do you grandfather them in, and how does that impact everybody? And so that's with respect to section 6. And then on, just not to jump around too much, but on section 7, that was talking about access to the machines earlier. Again, looking at industry on some of those, we had some language that we've been working on and trying to work on some substantive changes as far as saying, here's what we would suggest versus just criticize it. The main piece is that in some situations with smaller locations, you have the bar owners or others that have access as far as the keys to the locks for the machines to manage some of those components. They don't have access, at least in our operations, to be able to mess with the software or anything like that, as far as that technical term there. But would just put those on the table that we'll plan to have some additional suggestions of if they might be pleased with the commission. And of course, this is an ongoing process, and so hopefully we'll be able to get some folks to put their heads together and come up with some other solutions there.
Thank you, Jonathan. Is there further comments on section 4 here? Or, geez, where are we at? Yeah, chapter 4.
President Davis, Mr. Sweet with Sweet's Amusement also has his hand up.
Okay. Mr. Sweet, can you join us?
And I've got some comments also.
Okay.
There, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, yeah. On this section 6, line 15 through, well, let's see, just start at line 15. Same as Mr. Agopian. The way this rule is written to me looks as though the rules are saying that we will be able to put machines in 21 and under locations as long as they are quadrant off, which I agree with Mr. Agopian. We shouldn't limit this to only bars because I have several bowling alley centers that want to do this as well once this expansion goes through. And unfortunately, one of the 4 does not have a liquor license. However, they do have the room to quadrant it off and meet all the other rules. That I just wanted to get that on record that I was in agreement with Mr. Agopian on that, not limiting us to where, I agree with some limitations, like maybe not, libraries and things like that, where your major component is going to be, too young of adults or too young of people to play. But as far as in a location where it is under constant supervision, with a person at cash register with the designated area, I believe we should be able to put them, in more places than just the bars. And then also on the access, I would also agree with Mr. Downing that as far as my machines, all my vendors have access to the money and to the print paper, and it just makes it so much easier. So you're not having to get up at 1 o'clock in the morning to go do a payout because they don't have the funds in the bar. And just like Mr. Downing said, our machines as well, the software function of that is password protected, where no one has that password or can only be manipulated by the manufacturer's techs. And I think that's all I had wrote down for now.
Thank you, Mr. Sweet. Further discussion on chapter 4. Commissioners? Charlie, you have a few more items to put forth?
Yes.
President Davis, Mr. Pascal, Entertainment Experts, has raised his hand. He's moving over right now.
Go ahead. Mr. Pascal?
Sorry, I was clicking through on all my buttons there to get in. So thanks, everybody. President Davis, thanks so much. Commissioners, thank you so much for this opportunity to work this through with you all. I wanted to talk about, just from an operations standpoint, what I'm hoping is to limit some of the work that you folks have to do. So on section 12, it talks about malfunction and defects. And then on B, it defines what a malfunction and a defect is, and goes into the fact that we need to report every malfunction or defect refers to playing anything that impedes the player's ability to play the game or receive an award from the game. So from my perspective, that would mean if a screen goes out, if a power supply goes bad, if a bill acceptor jams, if there's a printer paper jam, if a button doesn't work. And in my head, I'm thinking you guys really don't want all that information every time, right? We're dealing with that on a daily basis today. My suggestion would be to put some verbiage in there to talk about tracking that information so that there is, and then this goes back to section 14, and it talks about player complaints. So if it goes back to where the commission gets a complaint about a location or a vendor or a specific machine, we would then have the records to go back and do some research on what happened and when it happened and give you a full ability to do an audit.
Good suggestions.
Good suggestions. That may simplify things a little. And we like it simple, right?
That's right. Thank you, President Davis.
Thank you, Matt. Charlie, I believe you had a few more comments.
Yes, on page 4-4, if you notice on line 39, we inserted separate sales tax permit. I believe that was a suggestion that may have come from Representative Newsom early on, and we had added that into this language. One of the things that's come up, and Mr. Sweet had brought this up, and is again in this chapter, section 13, reserve requirements. While a lot of these rules flowed over from our sports wagering, and we're looking on page 4-9, and a lot of these rules are going to flow to the historic racing side of it. I think one of the first things is to look at this, and I do have a concern that we may not have the legislative authority to place a bond requirement, but while I think it's incredibly important on other aspects here, what is the question, I guess, is what is our level of liability for the wagering public, for the state of Wyoming in this situation? Our legislature blessed us with a $3 maximum wager, a $3,000 maximum payout, and things. So this is a lower, while it is a gaming device, my opinion, you know, it's a lower threshold potentially, commissioners. And I'd just like to get that out for discussion. And I think, you know, do we need this requirement? Or another thing had come up, and Mr. Laramendi, I think, had mentioned this to me, is do they have, each one of these operators, do you have liability insurance that would potentially maybe cover that liability so the wagering public is not at risk of lacking getting paid? Did that make sense? Nod.
It does, you know, when you have a business, you carry a liability insurance in your business. And so I guess that would be up to the vendors to tell us where they sit on that, or does their insurance cover that, or do we need more insurance upon insurance?
We have, in our Pari-Mutuel statutes, we have a requirement to where if you're going to have a Pari-Mutuel event, we do have a $5,000 deposit or bond requirement for live events. And then pursuant to rules, we were given the ability to set it on simulcasting. We set $100,000. Now, in that vein, is $100,000 enough with the size of the liability out there at this point? That's for you all to decide in the near future, I'm guessing. As far as a little bit of reference for you, DC does not require a bond or reserve account with their skill-based amusement games. Ohio does not address it either in their rules and regulations for skill-based amusement games. And I believe Nebraska additionally does not require bonding of the individuals either. I think those are the only ones that we came up with some information earlier this week. And then, the other question is, if we do feel like there needs to be a reserve, and if you do decide that is important to you, then how do we calculate that? Per machine, what would that picture look like? And again, it's something that's sure isn't going to get discussed and figured out today, but I just wanted to bring that up so we have that in our discussion. So
President Davis, Representative Newsom has her hand up.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead, Representative Newsom.
Thank you, President Davis. So is the suggestion that we just delete section 13 entirely? And I guess I would speak in favor of that, because earlier we had the discussion, if they don't pay their tax, we turn the machines off. I think it's their job to manage their cash flow. The other thing I had was on 4.4, on page 4.4, I saw that the limitations on debts and payouts was deleted, and I'm curious why. Thank you.
On page 4-4, we redlined B and C, President Davis. And thank you. During our last meeting, we had noted, we had that we need to move it to a different chapter. So, and what this was speaking to is the establishments. And so we moved that, I believe, to chapter 5.
So on chapter 5, Representative Newsom, though, that language is somewhere back in there again and a little better presented. That make sense?
I see that now. Thank you so much for that explanation.
So you're talking about 13 and deletion of the whole section 13? Is that correct, Representative Newsom?
Yes, I believe that's the discussion we were having, was just about not micromanaging somebody's cash flow. Because we have, if they don't pay us, then we turn their machines off. So that seems to be a big enough hammer.
Okay, further comment? Okay, could you expand on that a little bit here?
President Davis,
Speak up too.
E, I just wonder if eliminating the ability for the commission to audit the vendor's reserves at any time, if that would have any bearing, or if we want to include that as part of the deletion.
Commissioner Newsom? Our representative, Lisa Fluffy.
Thanks for the upgrade. I don't know the reason we would need to audit a reserve if we're not requiring a reserve.
Okay.
And we have the ability to audit the full system in the auditing.
Thank you.
President Davis,
Go ahead.
I have a question. The reserve requirement, does it only cover the operator's liability to pay the taxes, or does it also include its ability to pay the winnings?
It's the winnings. President Davis, Commissioner Barry, it would be the winnings. And with a limit of 3,000 and a max bet of $3, while that could be across the board over 800 machines, it's
if they were to hit at the same time.
Yeah.
President Davis, Mr. Pascal has his hand up.
Okay, go ahead, Matt.
President Davis, commissioners. So I'm glad you clarified what the bond was for, right? So from a tax payment perspective, where I sit is, and I agree with Representative Newsom, I think it's a little burdensome the way it's written, potentially harsher penalties for lack of tax payment, right? If we can't pay our taxes, then we probably ought not be operators. And then back to the payment of the player, I think at the end of the day, our players, we don't have any progressives, right? So there's not a pool of money that sits and gets built up and then has to be paid. So there really isn't a reservoir of funds that need to be safeguarded. And players expect to be paid in the moment. So, and it specifically, and I'm sure most other vendors work the same way. We even require that tickets that are won are cashed on the same day within the same 24-hour period. So I think the liability issue there from a player not getting paid is pretty minimal. And if they don't get paid, the commission's going to hear about it right away. So again, I think maybe there's goes back to maybe harsher penalties on the lack of tax payment and potentially add some harsh penalties for repeat offenders not paying players. Just my thoughts.
President Davis.
Go ahead, Charlie.
Yeah, and President Davis and Mr. Pascal, you know, and that's the reserves here, as we said, would be for the, you know, it is for the jackpots and different things. So I kind of agree with what you're saying, that maybe either the ability to do bonding for the tax payments. We have two different things here. So whether it's a penalty for non-payment of taxes, because, you know, in the Pari-Mutuel side, those bonds are general. They're designed to, and it's very clear in the statutes what those are used for. Here, because we don't have maybe the statutory authority for bonding and different things, you know, but I think that's a great, maybe bigger discussion. Thank you.
Any further comments? Is there anybody else with their hand up that we can't see?
President Davis, more hands up.
What did you say, Nick?
There's no other hands up.
Okay.
President Davis, I kind of have a comment.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I really don't have a comfort factor with not requiring some reserve to cover the liabilities. You know, you say, well, if they don't pay, we'll shut them down. Well, you shut them down, they got no income. How the hell are they going to pay it? So, you know, I'm not in favor of eliminating this whole reserve requirement. Because I think the people that are going to probably get the short end of the stick are the winners if they can't collect their winnings.
Maybe there's a happy medium we can come up with here in this
Perhaps.
process. Because the public in general is who we are trying to protect.
Exactly.
Okay.
Good point.
President Davis.
Go ahead.
Yes, Commissioner Covello here. I agree with Commissioner Barry in that respect, and certainly something based upon maybe the number of machines and so forth. We could come up with a formula to have a reserve based on something like that's equitable to all. Because he's exactly right. The state of Wyoming can remain whole without the revenue off a few machines or from one vendor, but the individual bettors are the ones who will really kind of take it in the shorts in the end. So,
Very good point. With that, is there any further comment on chapter? Yeah, who said?
President Davis, this is Commissioner Leinen.
Go
I
ahead.
have to agree with Commissioner Covello and Commissioner Barry. Is there any way that we could develop a math model based on, these machines have been in operation now for well over a year. Is there any kind of a math model that we can come up with where, supposedly, we limit the amount of machines to 4. Is there some sort of a math model that we could come up with? I mean, maybe you can help me with this, Charlie or Nick. What is the maximum that any one location has ever had to pay out in one single day?
That's a good question. We will have to research that and get back with you.
And then David says that he should be able to come up with some type of a math model that we could try and predict this.
And I would think if we come up with some sort of a math model and see what we've ever had for maximum payout in any one location, the locations that are here in my area, they don't even have 4 machines; they have 3. Number of machines that you have in a location, come up with a reserve that you would have in each one of those locations based on how many machines are in operation. Just a suggestion.
Good point. Are there further comments? Any further comments on chapter 4?
President Davis, Mr. Sweet has raised his hand.
Okay. Go for it.
President Davis, commissioners, thank you again. I had a question on section 14 on player complaints. Is this going to be something that the commission provides a form of some sort? Or is this something that the operators or vendors have to come up with on their own?
Charlie?
Thank you, President Davis. Mr. Sweet, I think we would provide you with a form that you could utilize and work with you on that with all the vendors. We currently have complaint forms that we use for historic racing, for live racing that are on our website. So yes.
Okay, and does that form then, would that be something that would be like put in like a flyer type form where it's accessible at all the locations? Is that what this is getting at?
President Davis, Mr. Sweet, yes, I think we would have that. The complaint forms we currently operate with are on our website, so we could have it on the website and people could grab them, or we can provide you the link to the websites, make sure you've got all the information, so it's makes it simple. And we can set those forms up to where you can autofill them and you can fill them in and then just email them right from the form and submit those.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sweet. Further comment on chapter 4?
President Davis, I have one other question.
Go ahead.
When we talked about locations, bars, truck stops, bowling alleys, do we automatically exclude the existing OTBs for these machines, or are they going to be allowed in there also?
We haven't addressed it.
That hasn't been addressed, Commissioner Barry. I kind of see a conflict of interest between an OTB owner and a games of skill owner, so I don't know if that will ever come together.
Well, shouldn't it be addressed at some point in the rules?
Okay, we can look at that. Where would that be in the sites, or?
We just need to address it in the rules somewhere. We would have to do it on
in the establishments.
We would need to do that with the simulcasting and the historic racing rules. So we need to remember to have that in there. Now, in our historic racing locations, we do not exclude them from selling lottery tickets.
Good point.
And I don't know if that's, kind of a similar vein or so. Be good discussion. Come up with something that would work. I think it's very, very valid. Thank you.
Further comments on chapter 4?
Sure, yeah, we can.
If there's no further comments on chapter 4, look for, or I guess we don't need to go to closure there.
No.
How about a 5-minute break? Does anybody care for that? Maybe 10 for Commissioner Daigle? Okay.
We will resume at 10:40, 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Turn off your speakers.
No, 5-minute break.
Do a quick roll call, yes.
Welcome back, everybody. Charlie, would you want to do a quick roll call? Make sure we didn't lose any.
Thank you. President Davis.
Here.
Vice President Broussard. Still absent. Commissioner Cavello. He may not be back yet. Oh, he's back. There he is. Commissioner Daigle is back. Commissioner Barry.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Leinen.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Kura. And we have Dwayne Pacheco is on the call as well. We have Dan Schiffer, I believe, still on the call.
I don't see Dan up there.
He may have had to go.
Representative Newsom.
Representative Newsom is here with us today, and I don't know if Senator Driscoll made it or not. He didn't make it. We have a quorum.
All right, Charlie. We have our AG, Mr. Taylor.
And Mr. Kaler is continuing to be with us.
With that, let's go to chapter number 5, skill-based amusement game standards.
At our last, may I jump in?
Yes.
At our last meeting, one of the suggestions, I believe, that came from one of the vendors was to potentially, they were suggesting that we utilize the GLI 11 technical standards. This is a consumer protection concern with the public. And, you know, I think for the most part, if you have not had an opportunity to look at the GLI 11, you know, I can very easily send it to you. It's a rather large document. It covers a large area of technical standards for gaming devices. It is the, you know, in the gaming world, it is the best practices document. And when you look at that document, it was put together by utilizing, you know, I think, oh Lord, 20 or 30 or more different states, from tribal gaming to full-blown gaming in Las Vegas, to different states, Arizona, Connecticut, Iowa, Kansas, Michigan, DC, different states. But it is the gold standard. Most all of the testing laboratories are accustomed to testing the devices to this standard, and they also embrace the standards. So it's not a lab specific, it's a industry benchmark. That was suggested, you know, and I believe, just from my experience with the devices that we have currently out there, I believe everything that we have on the ground currently would comply with that. I would need to do an additional dive into that to see, but at this point, just from our point of view, which is not the technical side of it, I believe all of the current machines that are out there would comply. At least I know these manufacturers are accustomed to complying in other markets to this standard. But with that, this is our skill-based amusement game standards chapter. As you can see on page 5.3, we moved the language over from the previous chapter. There it's redlined, game limitations. We also expanded on some of that language. You can see that. Again, it's all redlined, and then we had to renumber this chapter. Early on, yeah, I guess I just open it up right now for questions, and I'm going to look at my public comment here and see what we've got.
Commissioners, we have a question, discussion here.
President Davis, I've got a couple more hands on the outside I'm going to bring in. Mr. Ian has raised his hand as well.
Okay, Commissioner Cabello, you're muted. Oh, now we lost you altogether. Hey.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, my question is with regards to the bonus features and stuff like that, not requiring any extra payment, do they also then allow for, is there anything in there that kind of goes beyond the $3,000 payment or $3 per play that gets us in any kind of a jackpot there? Does this work and stay within the statutes? I guess that's probably to Mr. Kaler.
Mike?
Or you, David, if you can answer.
So,
President Davis.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and President Davis, Commissioner Cabello, yeah, my understanding, the games that we have out there, we do have that protection once the gaming laboratory does their review. They confirm that there's no potential of those payouts that exceed that jackpot amount. So we have that protection in place as well. There may be some operators or I guess some vendors potential. It looks like some folks have their hands up that may also want to weigh in. Obviously, if we get a lab report that does come back after the lab has reviewed the games and said that there is a potential for payouts that exceed that amount, those games would not be approved to be on the floor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Commissioner Cabello. Okay, discussion, commissioners.
Do we have hands up from?
I believe we have hands up.
President Davis.
Go ahead, Randy.
This is Commissioner Leinen. I have a question about, I guess I understand where Charlie is coming from, that it isn't a particular lab specific thing with the GLI requirement. But as probably most of the commissioners will remember, we had some issues with some of the labs when we first started to do this. Are we going to get pushback from any of the vendors or any of the labs requiring a GLI certification? Even though it's the industry gold standard.
Okay, Randy, good question. Charlie, could you
Yes.
take that one on?
President Davis, Commissioner Leinen, from what I understand from hearing from a few of the vendors is that meeting that GLI 11 threshold is not a problem from them. And also, they're currently utilizing different laboratories. And right now in the gaming world, it's the standard. However, whether it's BMM, whether it's Eclipse, whether it's whoever, they can test to those standards. That's not a problem from them. Again, from what I understand, but you do have representatives from the stakeholders that may be able to expand on that.
Anybody?
Thank you.
Anybody with a hand up? We don't see any hands, so.
President Davis, Mr. Agopian had his hand up, and then Ms. Wilkinson also.
Okay, with that, we'll start with Ms. Wilkinson.
Good morning, President Davis and members of the commission. Catherine Wilkinson today on behalf of Cowboy Skill and Paysomatic. I would like to specify that the G11 standards are based on slot machine and casino type gaming. So it is a gold standard for those types of games. And while our skill games are more than happy to comply with several of those standards, a lot of them do not apply because they are not relevant. They are a different type of gaming. So I did want to bring that to your attention.
President Davis, and that's absolutely correct. Thank you for that clarification, Ms. Wilkinson. What they've done in Nebraska, for instance, they have adopted parts of it that applied, And that would be, if that is the direction that the commission wants to go, that might be the potential, or we can pull out of that document and come up with our own document and not even reference that.
Okay, any, Nick? All right.
Mr. Agopian has his hand still raised, and Mr. Robbins also.
Okay, let's go with Mike. Go ahead, Nick.
Thank you, Chairman Davis. I would agree with the comments that Director Moore has made about the GLI 11 standard, and specifically the comments about how Nebraska has adopted those rules and exempted those areas where they don't apply. But at the end of the day, adopting the GLI standard, and if you do receive a copy of that, I could certainly send one too. It identifies right up front that this is designed to take the decision-making process of reviewing the lab reports and make it objective for the lab so it doesn't fall subject to a vote to this commission. And I think, I don't know if those were some of the issues that were faced originally or not, but in terms of process, it would give you the report, the standard, regardless of the lab that performed it, in a way that it was a thumbs up, or it could take a lot of the ambiguity out of it for this commission. But along with that, the process and the standard, because it is that gold standard, it takes longer. It's important, I think, now to identify that implementation of that would likely warrant a different transition period or an extended transition period, certainly for those operators operating today within the bounds of the law as they were to transfer into this new standard. And I rely on Director Moore or somebody else if they had comments, but it's my understanding that the review process itself is just much longer. And it would be something that would have to be taken into consideration on the timing and probably on new applications going forward as well.
Mike, could you respond a little bit to that?
Mike Robbins.
Good afternoon. My name is Mike Robbins. I'm with Gaming Laboratories International. Just to touch base real quick on the GLI standards is, one of the things is GLI 11 is a document, and all the GLI standards are able to be used by any other laboratory for a baseline of testing. Obviously, not all of the GLI standards will always apply in all submissions, and in this particular case, much of GLI 11 will not be applicable. What we've seen in other markets like Nebraska is, as mentioned, they adopted sections of GLI 11. Now, another option, as mentioned, was pulling out the pieces of GLI 11 that could be applicable to skill-based immune indicators, and put that into a separate document. As far as the certification from an independent test lab, it's up to the independent test labs to create these laboratory reports that kind of specify whether or not it's compliant with the standards that are in place, and then it's ultimately up to the commission to decide to approve the machine or the game for use in your market.
Thank you, Mike. Charlie, would you like to expand on that a little?
Yeah, and commissioners, it's a great opportunity to have Mr. Robbins, who has helped us through this process, on the call with us today. And he was a part of our calls with the sports wagering as well, and a part of that whole process. If you have any just general comments or questions for Mr. Robbins while we have him here on the call, feel free to ask him.
Does that mean you have a question there? You have a smile on your face, Mr. Taylor. Is there any?
I'm good. I don't have any questions. I think I've hammered Mr. Robbins over the last month, so I think I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Robbins? Any hands up anywhere, Nick?
Mr. Agopian has his hand up.
Go ahead, Mr. Agopian.
I do have a question, but it may not be able, the answer may not be forthcoming today, I guess. But I'd be curious, as Mr. Robbins has looked at the rules and as they've been developed, would the implementation of a GLI standard help with the record keeping or audit procedures, or help facilitate these rules being complied with in other sections of the proposed rule?
Mr. Robbins?
So I guess I'm having a little trouble quite understanding. However, there are elements covered within the GLI standards and, in GLI 11, for instance, that talk about, tracking revenues from the games themselves. And should, for instance, GLI 13, which is our monitoring control system, should there be monitoring control systems implemented in this space, that would be where a standard like GLI 13 would come into place. Any sort of voucher system as well, used to pay the patron, for winning, their games. They cash out, they receive a voucher. That would be through a ticket validation system, and of course, the validation of those tickets within the establishment would all be through that system. So there are definitely, the GLI standards are definitely helpful in that regard. I don't know if that's what you're implying at, or if I'm completely shooting into the weeds.
Mr. Agopian?
Thank you, Chairman Davis. That does help. I apologize. My question was not that clear. And I think you answered it, that there are some of these standards address the ability for these machines to track in real time the information that ultimately we as vendors have to submit to the operator. The other thing, I guess, if I would ask one more question, is in the standard itself, does GLI 11 require connection to the internet? Because that's something that is not currently identified in the current rule draft.
It does not require connection to the internet. However, it does support the functionality for monitoring and communications, and where such a system is implemented. It's written in a way that, in case a setup does not wish to have any sort of monitoring control system, we're not just going to fail GLI 11 outright. But majority of markets we've seen, at least in the casino space, I'm not sure about the skill-based amusement space, utilize some sort of monitoring and control system. But the standard's written in a way so that there are communication requirements if communications with external systems are utilized.
Great. Thank you.
Any further questions for Mr. Robbins? Hearing no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Where are we now on Chapter 5, Charlie?
I think we have
further discussion.
I think we're finished with Chapter 5. Looking at, I think Chapter 5 is good. We can move to the next one.
All right, well, we're in discussion on Chapter 5. We'll go to Chapter 6, Audit and Internal Controls. Charlie, where are we?
Yes, Chapter 6, Audit and Internal Controls. Early on in this process, we did receive on page 6-3, Section 7, lines 26, we added lines 26 and 27. One of the concerns that was raised, and I believe this was Commissioner Daigle had this concern, is not that we're calling out auditors or anyone, but there seems to be a lot of times auditors, there's delays, there's issues, there's concerns with completing an audit within a prescribed amount of time. And so there on E, we added, for good cause shown by a vendor, the commission may grant an extension as required under this section for a specific period of time to not exceed an additional 30 days. This may require, if this is something that you commissioners would like to leave in here, it may require a little bit of wordsmithing. You know, that was my attempt at it, doing so. So that was that. I did receive a public comment from Patriot Skill Games, Section 7 again. And they had a concern with the requiring a CPA licensed in the state of Wyoming to do those audits. I know this is language we brought forward from the sports wagering requirement and required to at least be licensed in the state of Wyoming. And also this would be something that we were going to be moving forward with all of our gaming. So that was one of their questions. I don't see any additional submissions and public comments. I guess at this point it would be
commissioners. Do we have any comments on this section?
Mr. Downing has his hand raised.
Mr. Downing, there you are. Go ahead, Jonathan. We see your hand.
With that, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jonathan Downing. We'll probably get some language in regarding audits, depending on the size of some of the companies out there, what that looks like as far as, I mean, obviously want to follow the intent of ensuring there's internal controls and all of those things that are generally accepted accounting principles. In the meantime, on some of those areas, it depends on how big we bite off, and also timing of audits, because a number of folks are probably familiar with you're doing it during peak season versus a different time of the year, what that cost looks like to those small businesses that are operating some of these machines. And so we'll come back with something in that area, not opposed to ensuring that we have good internal controls and those types of things. Just want to make sure how that gets achieved or what that looks like.
Very good point. Do we have any questions for Mr. Downing, commissioners? Nick, is there anybody else up there with a hand?
President Davis, I don't see any other hands.
Thank you, Nick. Are there any further comments on Chapter 6? Further discussion? Hearing none. Let's proceed to Chapter 7, Responsible Gaming and Advertising.
President Davis, Chapter 7, Responsible Gaming and Advertising. From one of the stakeholders, we've received a comment regarding Section 1. Their comment from the last stakeholders meeting, it is presumed that a responsible gaming plan can be provided by the commission to vendors. Yes, we can provide any of the vendors' information, assist them in coming up with those plans and work with them.
Is that by just simply furnishing a framework for them to expand upon?
Yes,
yeah.
I believe so.
Any questions from the commission at this time on Chapter 7, Responsible Gaming and Advertising? Seeing no further hands or comments at this time, we shall proceed to Chapter 8, Disciplinary Actions and Hearings.
President Davis, Chapter 8, Disciplinary Actions and Hearings. This is a standard document that we had pulled over from our last set of rules, referencing, by incorporating contested case practices and procedures, and also outlining grounds for disciplinary actions, Section 1, Section 2, intention of disciplinary proceedings, down through all of our here in this document. As far as public comments, I did receive a rather lengthy comment on Chapter 8, Sections 8 and 9 from Patriot Skill Games, and you all have those, and we will forward this to Mr. Kaler to review these. And again, I'm just double checking with, we did not receive any other comments prior to the meeting on this chapter.
Do we have any comments or discussion from the commission? Seeing no comments, do we have any hands up, Nick?
President Davis, there's no hands up.
Well, that one went pretty good then. Shall we proceed on then? We're on a roll now.
We're done with that.
We're done.
We have gotten through that. One thing to bear in mind, again, thank you for all the participation here today between myself, David, and Kelly offline here. We're putting all these together. Kelly will do like she does for a lot of our meetings. We'll put together the summary and we'll put these together for you commissioners and for your review. If you see something that we missed, please make sure you let us know when we send those out to you. And again, our legislative session starts next week. We need to be mindful that there may be legislation that A, would be introduced, and B, potentially passed and signed by the governor that could change the direction here on some of the rules. So, that's always a situation. So at this point, while the session is in, we may take a bit of a timeout. We may have another stakeholders meeting before the end of the session. Just that, keeping that in mind, things could change between now and our next stakeholder meeting that would place some different requirements on us here, or remove them. So, but thank you, everybody. We have no executive session needed that I'm aware of.
No executive session. Oh, yep, we got. I don't. Would Representative Newsom, do you have any insight or on pending legislation or anything?
We had a couple bills brought by Senator Ellis, and one that would specifically make skill games expansion possible, and one that expressly prohibited skill game expansion. And neither of those were addressed in committee, in our last TRW committee, so I don't know whether Senator Ellis will be bringing those on her own, but they will not be committee bills.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for anyone?
President Davis?
Go ahead, Randy.
Commissioner Leinen? Since this is most likely my last meeting, as you pointed out at the top of the 3 hours here, I'd like to say it's been a pleasure serving with all of you. This is very important to the state of Wyoming. It's very important to protect the gaming public, and I just can't express enough how professional you all have been. So thank you.
Thank you. But you're not out of the woods yet. Okay, with that, let's proceed to item number 7, the next scheduled meeting, and any general updates that we have here from staff.
Thank you, President Davis. The next scheduled meeting, we have not set the date. It will be towards the end of March. I will get with you all on a date for that. It's yet probably the first of next week, and then we'll be mapping out our remaining the regularly scheduled meetings for the rest of the year, so everybody can make their plans. Hopefully, we did discuss a little bit this morning. President Davis had mentioned that maybe we should try to move a few of these meetings around the state, and so we will look into that. While it's easy for us here, the March meeting will be an in-person meeting. We do encourage that, but that's obviously up to you all to make those decisions, and we'll get those out to you as soon as possible.
Yeah, the more in person we can see you, the better we like it.
As far as updates go, you know, at our November meeting, commissioners, you authorized us to purchase the scanning tool and a scanning tool, tracking tool for all of our gaming. Coincidentally enough, part of the product is on back order. It obviously must require a chip of some kind, like vehicles and different things are out there, but we are still waiting on some of those things. We do have the scanners. Mr. Laramendi has actually spent the last, I think, 2 weeks inputting the information on all the skill games, and he will be also, this is an inventory management tool. So when you look at it in that kind of a vein, this is something that we can utilize for not just skill-based amusement games. We're going to utilize this for the historic racing locations. We can utilize it for inspections and different things, even at the racetracks as well, or our inventory, but it's a tracking system. The guys can, and we've even talked about maybe broadening it to the broodmare verification for the Breeders' Award program as well, to where they've got a book, they can scan when they're looking at a horse, scan it, boom, we know we looked at it on a certain date, certain time, and have all that information. I think it's going to be incredibly valuable, and I'm really looking forward to it. I know it's been a bit of a mind-numbing data entry for Nick over the last few weeks, but he's up for it. He's okay. We are still working on providing you some clear bids on the skill-based amusement games, tracking of the revenues in those sources. Again, like I said earlier today, we had a meeting yesterday with ETS. We've had several meetings with a couple other vendors to provide this to us, and hopefully we can have a proposal, because it is, while right now we have a closed pool, expansion in that world will create, instead of kind of bobbing on the surface and keeping up with everything, I'm afraid that our accounting department might be somewhat underwater. So some other nice news is hopefully the budget will go through. That will allow us to hire, at this point, 1 additional employee. It will also place 3 of our staff members. Again, hopefully the budget goes through to permanent positions instead of at-will positions with the contract. So that's exciting. As far as live racing goes, just a quick update. I am struggling a little bit with the overlapping race days, getting officials to work, but we are getting it put together. I never like to get right down to the last hour trying to make sure we've got good officials at the racetrack. We've always raised that bar, kept that bar fairly high, and I don't intend to lower that bar as far as who we hire at the racetrack to officiate the races. But we're getting it done. We, on the side of our veterinarian, providing veterinary services for the racetrack, we did an RFP and bid that. We received, the bids have closed now, and we will go through that process. I will have Dr. Berry work with me on that, and I'm guessing maybe President Davis or someone else to make those recommendations and review that. It's a fairly simple process, actually, so we'll have that to you in the near future. I think anything else, President?
I can't off the top of my head. David, do you have anything to put forth?
No, sir.
And you're awful quiet over here. Have you thought of a stewardship in your future? No stewardship. Could be a promotion. Okay, I guess with that then, if there's any further discussion amongst the commissioners or anything here? Everybody's awful quiet. And I would say, Charlie, without any further ado, the meeting is adjourned, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you, stakeholders. Thank you, Representative Grissom, everybody that's participated, and we'll look forward to our next stakeholders meeting working on these rules. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. It's been a pleasure serving with you.
I agree 100%. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.